Ah!
Hey guy, you look like you could use an upgrade. I can get you Nvidia's latest $1,000 GPU for just 20 bucks.
Really? What's the catch?
There's no catch, friend. With GeForce now, you don't need to own a GPU. You can use one of Nvidia's. They've got lots.
But cloud gaming? Come on. Everyone knows the input latency sucks, and compressed video looks super low res.
No way, buddy. With Nvidia's new Blackwell 5080 SuperPods, those problems are in the past.
If that's true, it sounds like a pretty good deal. I mean, it would take 4 years to spend the same money on my subscription, and the service includes the whole gaming PC, not just that GPU. Besides, I already rent my games from Microsoft anyway.
Yeah, and the best part is when new generations of GPUs come out, you'll automatically have them.
Wait, Nvidia has raised the prices with new generations before. Can I really count on that value? And what if my internet goes down? Then I can't game at all. Hey, where is the other guy that's supposed to bring up all the counterpoints?
Whoa, oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I was with our sponsor.
Oh, you.
Delete Me. Data brokers are getting their grubby little hands all over your personal data, and they're selling it to the highest bidder. Learn how Delete Me can protect your online identity and get that data removed at joindeleteme.com/LTT and save 20% off a plan that fits your needs.
Sponsor. Oh, sponsor. As a sponsor.
While the sales pitch for cloud gaming is affordability, performance, and convenience, the reason that Nvidia actually invested untold amounts of money in cloud gaming is, of course, economics. See, the old deal was you give Nvidia $1,000 of your dollars, they buy a nice leather jacket, and you get a GPU that you can keep for a very, very long time. But then they thought, hold on a second, what if we lease that same GPU to gamers for just $20 a month? Then we could have leather jackets forever. It's the same you'll own nothing and be happy strategy that has led to inflated prices in other markets, because for the owner class, renting is more profitable than selling over time. But I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh. Game journalists are raving about the indiscernible experience of the latest GeForce Now compared to local hardware. And it is certainly impressive what Nvidia is doing, taking input from your local peripherals, then running the games in a virtual machine in their data center, compressing that gameplay footage, and shooting it over the internet to your screen at up to 5K resolution, or up to 360 frames per second at 1080p. This support for higher resolutions and higher frame rates is a big improvement since we last looked at the service 4 years ago, and there's more. There's a lot more titles you can play if you own them on Steam or other platforms, including Xbox Game Pass now. So, I'm gonna go into this with an open mind. The problem with having an open mind, though, is sometimes your brain falls out. For our test machine, we targeted the type of system that you'd probably build around an RTX 5080. Except, we're running an older, more affordable GPU, the RTX 3060. We're gonna put the 5080 back in later to compare the experience of GeForce Now to running our games locally on the same hardware. Let's kick things off with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, our original plan was to run our tests on our CPU's integrated graphics, and you can do that. You don't need a GPU, but in our case, our onboard graphics is limited to HDMI 2.0, meaning we would have been limited to 60 Hz 4K and couldn't have experienced the full power of the latest GeForce Now, which can do up to 4K 120 frames per second. Well, it's already not completely bug-free. Second attempt. Oh, this is fun. If you interact with the Steam interface before the VM finishes launching and then opens up the game, you can actually see system information. Oh, wow. 8 physical CPU cores. Gives us a clock speed, but that doesn't tell us how much it boosts to. Yes, sir, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle gives us an RTX 5080 as advertised, except, what? With 48 gigs of VRAM? Clearly, this is not a 5080 then. It's probably an RTX Pro 5000 Blackwell, which is obviously a much more expensive GPU, except for Nvidia. You know, they make them so they can pay however much they feel like for them, I guess. Detects our monitor refresh rate at 120 Hertz. Windows 11? Yeah, I guess they could. If they want the best game support, yeah, that makes sense. And the OS itself doesn't need to handle any kind of specific virtualization stuff. It just needs to run in a virtual environment. 57 gigs of RAM. Okay. No, that actually makes sense because they would reserve some of the system memory for the hypervisor, and then whatever's left, they would divide up evenly for all of the VMs that are running. I believe is going to work perfectly this time. Hey, oh, I can feel the latency already. In fairness though, it's a lot easier to feel on a mouse than it is with a camera. And in fairness, guys, this is the first game that was designed from the ground up to require ray tracing hardware for its lighting. And seeing this run on a couple generation old mainstream card at 120 frames per second, 4K, and wow, I mean, looks pretty damn good, doesn't it? Sharp even. I do notice some blockiness and a little bit of compression, especially when in motion, but I wouldn't say that it feels like playing at 120 frames per second locally, but it's very usable. I think the most impressive thing about the image quality though is that we're not even at the highest setting. We're running at 60 megabit and we're running at 120 FPS. And my understanding is it can go as high as 100 megabit if you're in the cinematic mode, whereas this is balanced. And I'd probably prefer to play in balanced. It looks good enough and the latency is better. If you didn't tell me anything, I'd say I'm probably running at around 75, 80 FPS local because that additional latency feels like a little bit lower frame rate. It's improved a lot since the last time I used it. And I'm on a mouse. I should try with a controller where it's even harder to tell how much latency there is. Do we have one? I wouldn't notice. Damn impressive.
How does this compare to your last impressions of GeForce Now?
Even 4 years ago, it was pretty good. Now it's even better. And with a controller from a reasonable distance, I don't think I would notice that this is not running on local hardware. I wouldn't think it's 120 frames per second, but I would think it's running right on this computer right here. Our next game is going to be Borderlands 4. But before we do that, I want to experience cinematic mode for myself. And while one of the features of the Ultimate tier is that you can go into the game settings menu and alter things, there are certain elements that you have to configure before you launch the VM. And this is one of them. Never mind, we got stuck on the dreaded loading user profile bug and we were not able to launch cinematic Indiana Jones. Seriously, we tried like many times. Borderlands it is. I think it's important to acknowledge these sorts of bugs as part of evaluating the experience. Now this I like. This is an art style that lends itself extremely well to compression. And don't mistake any of my lack of skill for the game not running correctly. This is kind of freaking awesome. Anything with a first-person view, I'm gonna be able to tell that the mouse movements have an extra 25 milliseconds total. Extra, I'm gonna say 30. And so it should. I mean, this is one of the first games that was validated as being optimized for their new Blackwell servers. Which means what exactly? I mean, obviously a 5080 can run anything that a 4080 can, so we think this list is likely less about working on the new servers and more about Nvidia identifying which games they feel require a 5080 for an optimal experience. To test this, we fired up Control on a 5080 enabled account and a 5080 enabled location and noticed that we were dropped down to an older 4080 server because that was all it really needed. On the subject of control, I mentioned before that Nvidia gives us control over the in-game settings. So what I wanted to do is set this to exactly Gearbox's recommended settings for an RTX 5080 and see if our VM is bottlenecked in some way where it doesn't give us an optimal experience. Here we go, and wow, that looks way better. Also, this is still running at over 200 frames per second in-game, which is more than enough to stream it at 120 FPS. With that said, I can definitely see stuff that doesn't look that great with compression artifacts. Like, see what's happening as I go through these God rays? Ooh, that's a yuck. I'm not even getting the benefit of the extra level of detail and stuff like this grass. It just ends up looking kinda gross when I'm in motion. Still, if I'm paying for Ultimate, I would appreciate the ability to be able to set this stuff. And you can even configure GeForce Now to remember your settings. So the next time you launch it, if there's something you like better, you can totally do that. It feels like the latency might be a touch higher here. So it's possible that Nvidia had things turned down to ensure that the GPU doesn't get overburdened by the encoding and then end up running a little bit slower. Let's drop it down to 1440p and see what happens. Oh boy. I still definitely suck at video games. Oh, distant objects, definitely fuzzier. If you have a 4K monitor, you're gonna wanna use it. And I gotta say, I don't think the latency is really much better. Like maybe we gain back another 10 milliseconds, 5? It's still very noticeable in a first-person application like this. I would wanna play at 4K if I could. Garbage in, garbage out when it comes to compression, man. So the cleaner an image you can put into this thing, the better it's gonna look once you transmit it over the internet. Time to find out if I'm right about the latency with a little device called an LDAT. This is a creation from Nvidia. It basically automates mouse clicks, and then it checks for the muzzle flash, measuring the time between the click and the weapon firing. So this is adding more like 50 milliseconds plus. Damn. Of course, we won't know the exact amount until we throw a 5080 into this machine and actually run that. And we can't do that until we do one more game. The spiciest game yet. See, PC gamers said that they could not tell the difference between local hardware and GeForce Now while playing Apex Legends at 1440p on medium to low settings. That was before it was rolled out publicly, and it was in a different geographical location, so we're not sure that we can 100% replicate their test conditions, but what we can do is play the game and see if we agree. To try to replicate their experience, I've set everything to low to medium settings, whatever exactly it is that means. It feels way better than Borderlands. Like, way better than Borderlands. Dude, I would guess that this is a solid, like 25 milliseconds better than what I just played. Okay, I need the LDAT back. A very big difference. However, and this is kind of hard to know how to explain to you guys, the difference we're measuring right now could be because this game runs way better in GeForce Now. It could also just be run-to-run variants, because when they tested Borderlands at the same settings that I was using just now, when they were prepping for this video, they got more like 50 milliseconds. Like way better than what I got. That's the thing about cloud gaming. The experience can be great, and other times it can be not as great. Just ask Luke. He knows. Dude, this is way better. Like we're averaging freaking 45 milliseconds. This is very playable, and we have seen only a fraction of its full power. I want to try the 360 Hertz competitive mode. In order to get the most out of competitive mode though, we need to reconfigure our display. This is a dual mode display from LG, so it was running at 4K 120 Hertz before, and now we've reconfigured it to run at 1080p 360 Hertz. Whew. The image quality is not as good. Like that's pretty rough. But the latency, if you told me this was local and just, not that great of a computer, dude, I think I believe you. And not just cause I'm on a controller or whatever, like with Indiana Jones, like in a Twitch shooter. But I'm gonna say 25. Man, I'm good. That's really impressive. 25 milliseconds, full chain. I mean, back when we were gaming on 60 Hertz monitors, that would have been impressive even, because that's up to 16 milliseconds right there, just from the monitor. What's interesting though is this time my results are the same as when my team tested it a week ago. Maybe I just got a more favored connection when I put it in competitive mode. That's a possibility. But another possibility is that by running at such a high frame rate, Nvidia is able to pare down the total latency. You can really feel it. Now the question is it worth what we're giving up compared to if we just spend the money up front and get a GPU? Let's check it in. Naturally, I'll be doing so with my trusty transparent LTT screwdriver. Where can we get it?
LTTstore.com.
Now, I fully recognize that most people are buying GeForce Now because they don't have a 5080 in their gaming PC, but we have the luxury of trying them side by side, so the way that I see it, we should. And I gotta tell ya, yeah, it looks a lot better, but if I was my brother-in-law, sorry Alec, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. At 1080p, you're still getting a bunch of, shimmering and aliasing all over everything. And in some ways it looks worse here. So you're kind of trading one version of low fidelity for another one. As for the latency, yeah, it's lower, but not in a way that my weak human body could probably perceive without really focusing on it. Boop. Yes, it's lower, can confirm. Not using the internet to stream your game video is faster, a lot faster, about 15 milliseconds, which is cool because that actually tells us best case scenario running at 360 Hertz, how much latency is Nvidia's encoding and transmission of this video data actually adding? And the answer is not that much, like 15 milliseconds. Oregon, the GPU that we were gaming on was. Now it's right here. That only cost me 15 freaking milliseconds. Of course, this was at 1080p, so this is kind of the worst case scenario for the local experience. Let's see how we feel about it once we're running at 4K with all the eye candy turned on. I think we could just go straight to Indiana Jones. Sure. I don't know that we need Borderlands. Jumping into Borderlands, this immediately looks way better, but I gotta admit, something I didn't really think about before when we were testing GeForce Now is that a bunch of our latency was actually added by FrameGen, not by video encoding and not by our distance to the Nvidia data center. So even though I'm running this locally, it's a little bit on the higher side. The animation is super smooth because we're probably running at hundreds of frames per second, but because we're running at 3x FrameGen, just like Nvidia was, feels a little yellowy, if you kind of get what I mean by that. Man, so how do I evaluate what it feels like? Because there's sort of two different versions of it. It's definitely better. It looks so smooth, but it feels so spongy. Say 35. 30. Damn, to its credit, FrameGen bamboozled me here. I don't know what's more interesting here. The fact that FrameGen seems to be adding almost as much latency as GeForce Now was, or the fact that my perception of it is better than it actually is. It's definitely the kind of thing that, like older TVs, if you're a good enough gamer, you can get used to it.
When we tested locally without FrameGen, it was 20 milliseconds, just under.
So it's adding like 20 milliseconds, and then it was only, what, like another 25 to get to the GeForce Now results? Like, that's crazy. Here we go, and yeah, it's sharper, but one of the things that I didn't realize, because I hadn't done a side-by-side yet, is that part of the blockiness that I was observing was probably just the game's built-in film grain filter not being interpreted that well. To go back, I'd probably just turn that off and it would help at least a little bit. The latency is obviously better though, and that's not something that I could fix just by turning off film grain though. Man, this is a beautiful looking game. Either running locally or with GeForce Now. Clearly, you're getting more with local hardware in terms of the feel and in terms of the image quality, which totally makes sense. I mean, streaming, by definition, can only add overhead compared to bare metal. But that doesn't mean that the value proposition is total trash either. It's true what the devil said. If you commit and buy GeForce Now annually, you're paying $1,000, which is the RTX 5080's MSRP, over 5 years. And during that time, you probably won't need to upgrade your other hardware. So if you're on a 5-year upgrade cycle for your computer, that's some pretty significant savings. And if it works as well on LG TVs and Chromebooks as Nvidia says, you might not need a computer at all. But the angel meant to make some pretty good points too. You don't own your cloud gaming PC, which puts you completely at Nvidia's mercy for price increases and hardware upgrades. At least you can install your own Steam Cloud supported games now, but unless you pay extra to Nvidia for persistent storage, you're gonna need to install those fresh every time you fire up GeForce Now. And yeah, what if your internet goes down? Steam has an offline mode, but GeForce Now? That makes every game always online, all the time. And this entire conversation completely ignores that if you're in a rural area that doesn't have fiber, or if you just happen to be on a node that's unreliable or far away, you can just forget the whole thing. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Sponsor.
Delete Me. Even if you're super safe online, your data might still be compromised without you even knowing. See, sometimes data brokers can get their hands on your email addresses, phone numbers, and they will sell that information to the highest bidder. Delete Me can help protect your identity online by reaching out to data brokers on your behalf with requests for your info to be removed. And this doesn't have to just be a you thing. Delete Me also offers family plans where 3 other loved ones can receive protection too. Each member under a plan will get a personalized data sheet showing what info was removed and from where. So head on over to joindeleteme.com/LTT20 or click our link in the description to get 20% off today.
If you guys enjoyed this video, why not check out the first time that I checked out GeForce Now? It was impressive, but man, has it ever come a long way.